How hard was it on you and your dad when Dusty jumped, when he left you guys?
Well, Dad had it kind of broke my dad's heart in that he had given Dusty part of the Florida territory for free, in hopes that Dusty would, okay, if he was going to go to Atlanta and work some, but that he would spend time. And Dad had spent years getting Dusty over and creating Dusty Rhodes and all that kind of stuff. So when Jimmy Crockett wanted to compete against Vince, and he got in touch with Dusty, well, Dad couldn't really well get mad at him because he was going to pay him more money. We got a short-term deal going on here. Dad didn't spite anyone for making money, but when Dusty left, he took Barry, he took Magnum, he took Ron Bass, he took half the territory with him. And that really made Dad mad, because here he spent 5 or 6 years giving Dusty the opportunity to create the American Dream character and live it out, and give him part of the territory and give him part of the building in Orlando and all that kind of stuff as perks and bonuses. And then when Dusty left, it was like he was almost trying to kill the territory for taking all the talent with him. So, that wasn't a good thing. But you can't spite him for going. If they were making $100,000 in Florida and they could go work up for Crockett and make 200, the heck, that's what we're all here for. We're all here trying to earn a living. So Dad just thought he should have done it a different way. That he shouldn't have taken the guys with him. That he shouldn't have, if they wanted to go on their own, or if Crockett wanted to get in touch with them or whatever. But Dusty in the dressing room and in my dad's territory handpicked the guys, his crew, that he wanted to take with him when he made his jump to Crockett. So that made Dad angry.
Did you take it personally? I guess a little
probably,
personal?
Yeah, probably did. We never talked that much about it because Dad was he kept everything bottled up. He was very tight-mouthed, never talked about problems or any of that kind of stuff. Guess he figured his shoulders were big enough that he could carry any weight or any issue, and that he could overcome it. That he'd created all those guys, and he'd just go create some more.
Mm-hmm.
So it never really got the opportunity to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How did you wind up in WCW as a road agent?
Dusty Rhodes.
Okay.
The wrestling was basically over in Florida, and I was out on the beach. My wife and I had split up, and I was sitting out on the beach. I think he was just jealous because I was living on the beach, hanging out, having fun, and he had to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me one day. He said, "Hey, Mike, what are you doing?" I said, "Dream, I'm doing the same thing I was doing last week when you called. I'm laying out by the pool. I'm having fun. I'm playing. I'm doing and what." He said, "Do you want to come to work?" I said, "Come to work and what?" I thought he wanted me to wrestle because at that time I was still in my 30s. I was only 38, I guess. But Jim Herd, dumbass deluxe, he thought 38 years old was too old. But yet he wanted a fellow with one leg. He wanted this. He wanted that. He wanted all kinds of stupid things. Well, Jim Herd never wrestled. He didn't know nothing about wrestling. So here's a guy trying to run a wrestling company that didn't know anything about it. He was at one time had been a cameraman at a wrestling show in St. Louis and filmed some matches. Well, that doesn't make you a wrestling promoter. But that was another issue with Turner Company. That's a whole other story, though. But so I said sure. So I came up and I talked to Jim Herd, and I said, I'd really think I could help as a wrestler, because he said, "Oh, the guys won't respect you. If they think you're just a wrestler, they won't respect you. If you're in the office, they'll respect you." I said, looked at him. I said, "Obviously, you don't know too much about wrestling." I said, "Because the fastest way to get respect in this business is to be a wrestler. Get out in the ring with them. And when they see that you can roll right with them and go, then when you say something or whatever, they're going to respect it. Otherwise, if you're just some suit walking around saying, do this, they're going to tell you to get lost." So anyway, but Dusty Rhodes called me, and I went up, and that's when I went to work as a road agent.
Working with Eric Bischoff.
Pain in the ass. When Eric Bischoff got his job because the kid that was in the Wonder Years, Jason Hervey, lied and wrote a bogus what's the thing when you're going to try to get a job and you fill out a
Resume.
a bogus resume. I talked to Bischoff when he got there. He was an okay guy, you know. I mean, I said, man, you could be the next Gordon Soley. He looked good. He was the TV announcer. He was motivated. But time, this business and time really can disturb your brain and make you do crazy things. And the more he was around, Jim Ross locked him out of the TV room and wouldn't let him go in and do TV interviews if Jim wasn't there. And so he got to hating Jim Ross, and Jim Ross was battling with him, and just internal stupid things. Well, then Bill Watts is going to come save the day. We went through all the corporate people to run it. None of them could run it, so Bill Watts figures, shit, I ran Louisiana and Oklahoma, I can come in and run one. When Bill saw how broken it was and that there was no way that it was going to get fixed, the only way to fix it was fire everybody there, every wrestler, burn all the contracts and start over again. Because, I mean, people were being paid stupid money, and they'd stub their toe and stay home for a month at a time. The big work at WCW was get a contract and don't come to work. Just get your check. So when Bill saw that he wasn't going to fix it, he then set out to get himself fired. If he'd have quit, he wouldn't have got his money. But if he got fired, they had to pay him for 3 years. Mm-hmm. He had a big corporate, I got to tell him, he's got some balls. He had a big corporate meeting with the heads of Turner, and he had a beautiful office with a great big balcony and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, he did everything. He would come in with Zuba pants and T-shirts, and in our list, our office code, no baggy pants, got to wear a tie, got to do this, got to do that, got to keep your image. You're walking through CNN Center, the media capital of the world, you know, all this kind of stuff. He'd come in with sweatpants and Harley Davidson T-shirts and flip-flops, and I mean, he was doing everything he could. Horrible language in front of female executives and everything, and he was still, nobody had talked about firing him. The coup de grace was, he said, hang on one second, I'll be right back. In the middle of this big meeting, he walks out on his balcony and pees off the balcony with all the corporate executives sitting in his office. That got him fired. He was soon gone after that. Turner Corp says, we will never, ever, ever have another wrestling person run this program. That ain't going to happen. So everybody started submitting their resumes to get the job. Bischoff submitted a bullshit resume. He got the job. About the second day he's there, he steps, pokes his head in my office. He says, hey, Mike, come here and talk to me for a minute. Because I had, loaned him a gun at one time and talked to him and kind of was helping try to mentor him and talk about this and talk about that. We were buddies. I thought we were buddies. And so he brings me in his office and he says, what would you do if you were running this company? What would you change? Well, I'd already been talking to Hulk Hogan to get Terry to come work for us. Because at that time, Vince was in all that drug stuff the first time about steroids and everything, and Hogan was trying to separate himself from that. He didn't want a part of any of that mess. He was wanting to do TV shows, but he hated Bill Watts. So through Jim Barnett, I arranged for Terry to meet Ted Turner and be hired by Turner to do TV, to do that stuff, and just lend him to WCW for a pay-per-view or for a TV. He didn't need to be on every show, That way he didn't have to answer to Bill Watts, didn't have to do any of that. Well, when Bill Watts got fired, then I said, and he hadn't signed yet, I said, you need to hire Hulk Hogan, and I've already brought him here. He's already made the meetings. He's in. With Bill being gone, it's a no-brainer. We were having a hard time trying to get big crowds for TV. Before I went to work for them, Steve Kern and Steve really spent a year going to Universal Studios, talking. And finally, I went over with him the last meeting, and they were going to give us our own studio. They were going to make us part of Universal. We were going to have wrestling shows, like 2 shows a day. and the crowd from Universal would filter in, they'd fill up the building, and we'd have a wrestling match, and they'd leave. I said, you need to go over, but Universal was going to pay us to do that.
Okay.
So you need to go over to Universal Studios. You need to get the same thing we were going to do, where you get paid, you've got a built-in audience for your TV, and all your TVs will look good. He went, wow, yeah, that sounds good. I said, at that time we would do like 2 or 3 pay-per-views and 3 or 4 clashes. Well, it cost the same amount to do a clash as it did a pay-per-view, except we got no revenue from it. So I said, stop the clashes. I said at that time it was like, I want to say $250, $300 to do a clash, or it was the same thing to do a pay-per-view. I said, do a pay-per-view once a month. We get some. We're not out there, doing it for nothing. I said, and if you use your TVs, we'll take the pay-per-views and we'll book it like we used to book Bayfront Center. We would use our TV in Tampa and around that area and build and create and build and create. Then we'd have the big blow-off and at the Bayfront Center or Lakeland or whatever once a month. So I said, we'll use our TVs, we'll use all the stuff and create, and then once a month we'll have a pay-per-view. Instead of a big live event, we'll do a pay-per-view. So I was sitting in his office and he called Universal. Eddie Mansfield happened to be at Universal after Kern spent a year talking to these people. Then I went over for the final meeting, and we ran into him at a 7-Eleven or something. He was trying to get some TV show or something like that. Well, he just happened to sit in on our meeting. A month after that, Kern went to work in Tennessee or someplace, and Dusty called me, and I went to WCW. Eddie Mansfield to this day still has wrestling at Universal Studios. When I went to work and Kern went to work, because Eddie was sitting in the meeting, they thought he was like part of our company. I said, yeah, Mike went and did this, Steve's doing this, but I'm staying here. And he got the wrestling at Universal Studios. So Bischoff calls. They put Eddie Mansfield, and Bischoff had the speakerphone on. Now he thinks he's a big, cool guy. Yeah, this is Eric Bischoff. I'm CEO of WCW. And Eddie was always a smart ass. He says, what was your name again? Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff. I don't believe I've heard of you. What is it that you're wanting to do? He says, well, I'd like to come over and you wrestle at your venue and do TV stuff like that. And Eddie goes, no, I've already got wrestling and I've got wrestlers and I've got TV. I really don't need, and hung up on him. You could see the smoke coming out Bischoff's ears. He was so mad. I got up, I walked to the door, I looked over at him and I said, Disney's right next door. Same theme park, same thing, but bigger. He said, oh yeah, I can really see pro wrestling and Mickey Mouse going together. A month later, we were doing TV at Disney. A month after that, Hogan was hired. A month after that, no more clashes. I gave Eric Bischoff his key to success of that company. And he just went crazy, just giving people stupid contracts. God, you talking about somebody that got drunk with power. He was a real jerk off. I have no respect for him in any way, and I hope you hear this interview, Eric, because you're a thief and you're no good. So that's a fact. He should never have been in the wrestling business. He single-handedly bankrupted WCW. I'm surprised he's not in prison. I'm surprised he's not in prison for corporate fraud.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that bad?
Yes.
And
Yes. Sting and Luger and Flair and everybody had the same music for 15 years. Eric Bischoff starts a music company and says, nah, we're not going to use that other music. We're going to rewrite everybody's music, and I'm going to give the contract to my music company. He was signing the checks.
There we go.
He was signing the checks.
Double dipping.
The poster, the window cards. We'd use the same window card company, printing company forever. He puts Buff Bagwell and his mother in the printing company business, gives them the contract to print all the cards for WCW. gives one of his other Oriental buddies in Oregon or something like that the rights to sell T-shirts to Japan. When NWO came out, huge. Eric was selling the T-shirts to his buddy, or WCW, but Eric was running it. Eric was saying, yeah, sell them to him for $5. Yeah, do this, do that. Yeah, send $400,000 to the music company. Send $200,000 to the printing company. Do this, do that. He was okay and everything, sending money to himself. Companies that he owned part of. So Japan was sending the Japanese guy, his car dealer friend or something, and wherever it was, huge checks. And Eric and him were partners together. And it goes further than that. Kevin Sullivan was there through all that. I was gone. I had enough. I left. But Kevin was there. And I just don't see how some people have been able to make it through and not just gotten massive trouble. And he's just a dishonest, no good thief.
Oof.
From me to you, Eric. Jerk off.
Well, while we're talking about WCW, besides Eric Bischoff, was it this a friggin' loony bin, like people said it was?
Yeah.
During that time?
Yeah.
Everybody was
Yeah.
what the frig they want?
I mean, the whole thing was get a big contract, play like you're hurt, and don't go to work. At one time, we called like the top 20 main event guys. 3 of them were working. 17 were sitting at home, and they're making $1 million a year, $800,000 a year, $700,000 a year. The weekly money that was going out for these guys was unbelievable. Unbelievable. The Mexican guys that were coming up with Conan and all that group, when there was like 30 Mexicans working, they were all making like $150,000 a year apiece. And I got a feeling if that was looked into, there was one check going to a Mexican promotion company that Eric Bischoff probably owned part of. So it was a zoo. It was the tail was wagging the dog. It was just it was insane. That's why the last couple of years I was there, I just withdrew from TV, didn't want to be. I went to the powerhouse and tried to teach young guys how to wrestle and work with Paul Orndorff. Paul was running the school. Paul started in my office in Tampa, and I didn't want to be around the TVs. I didn't want to be around the people. And that other dipshit they sent down there, Vince Russo from New York, I mean, he couldn't have booked a phone booth. We walked out of Kevin Sullivan and I worked out of the first booking meeting, and I looked at Kevin. I said, could that have been a joke, that booking meeting we just came out of? That guy don't know nothing about wrestling. Nothing. He's our boss. And that is when it started crumbling, when Russo got there. And then it just progressively got worse. And then Bischoff got crazier, and Bischoff single-handedly bankrupted the company.
So even bringing Hogan over, nothing changed? It was
No,
still lunacy?
because here came Bill Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
And Goldberg was a natural phenomenon. He really got over fast in the first 6 months of his career. Kevin Nash got the booking job, and I love Kevin. He's right on line with Buddy Rogers and some of the real thinkers, that keep everything stirred up, that never let anybody get better than them, and or over better than them or whatever. When they had Bill Goldberg beat Hogan, and then Nash beat Goldberg. Now Hogan's been beat, Goldberg's been beat, and Kevin wasn't over that well. Kevin was the big guy, had been some, but they'd had NWO. He and Scott Hall were together. Scott was a talented guy, but Scott had got his brain in some difficulty, and then it was just Kevin. And Kevin had some knee surgeries and everything, and his mobility in the ring was getting he was getting a little older, and he was having a harder time getting around. So when Goldberg beat Hogan and then Nash beat Goldberg that just kind of sizzled everything off. It just kind of, yeah, nobody was over. Nobody really meant anything. Everybody was touchable, or it just washed it all. Everything was just a wash. People didn't care. He'd been beat, they'd been beat, he beat him, they beat him. Didn't have any importance anymore. And Goldberg, in an interview after winning the world's title, the announcer says, and Bill Goldberg, you just won the world's title and you've done this. What's the biggest, most important thing in your career that you'll ever remember? And Bill says, the first time I ever walked out onto a football stadium wearing a professional football jersey. I couldn't believe he said that. He was a world's champion. And he's talking about his biggest day in his career was when he went out on a football field. That he didn't have a career. He played, that might have been his only game or something. Why not give the credibility to the company that's paying your bills, that's earning you a living? You're the world's champion. That wasn't a big day. So there was a lot of people up there that just didn't get it. They didn't understand. They just didn't get it. And then they killed it from within. It's
nuts.
Stupid.
Nuts. They don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna stay with the controversy. We'll keep going. This is going good. There's an incident that we joked about all day today. The squeegee incident with you and a very nice man.
Yeah.
Sid Vicious.
Sid.
Wonderful human being.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Can you tell us a little about that whole incident? Because everybody heard there was other people involved in that. I don't know how people know that you were involved in the same squeegee incident.
Came back from, I don't know, Montgomery, Alabama or something. We just finished TV. Terry Allen and God bless Brian Pillman was there, and I was there. And they'd had a couple drinks and was kind of nodding off a little bit. And Sid had just left WCW and gone to WWF. So he's sitting over at the bar, and we hadn't seen him for, I don't know, he'd been gone for a couple months. And I just said, hey Sid, how are you? And went back, sat down. And Sid gets up, walks over, sits down, and commenced telling us what a chicken shit company WCW is, and everybody that works there is stupid, and WWE is the place to be, and just nah. Well, we all still work for WCW. We had pride in what we were doing. I didn't want somebody telling me that we were dumbasses or that the company sucked or anything else, so I just said, Sid, why don't you go back over and tell the girl that story at the bar? She'll believe it. I'm not going to. He said, you, Mike Graham, you're a loser. I've made more money in the last 2 months than you'll make here all year. You've spent your life, I've done this, I've done that. I looked across the table at him, I stood up, and I said, Sid, what you said might be true. But I said, this loser that hasn't made as much money as you is just about to kick your ass. And he gets up out of the chair and he sticks his interview chin out. He could do a hell of an interview, you know, but I wasn't buying it. He wasn't cutting an interview on a wrestling fan. I wasn't a wrestling fan. And I said, as I went around the table, he like dropped his arm and he said, well, if you want to beat up a guy with one arm, go ahead. I said, one arm? I said, shit, looks like you got 2 arms to me and they're 3 times the size of mine. Yeah, but, and he pulls his shirt sleeve up. He had a little Band-Aid. A little Band-Aid on it. I ripped my bicep today. Oh, Sid, get out of here. Just go home. You know, don't come in here and insult us and then act like this. I said, just go home. I helped him put his windbreaker on. It was kind of cool. I helped him put his windbreaker on and everything. So he walks out the door. So I'm standing with my back to the door. I'm trying to get Brian up and Terry to get him to the room and all that kind of stuff. And from behind me I hear, all right, Graham, I'm ready for you now. It's going to be an even fight now. I'm ready for you. I thought he was kidding. I turn around and look, he's got a squeegee, like you clean your window with, a squeegee in his hand. I looked at him and went, are you serious? He goes, yeah, and he's in the break, like he's in a position where he's going to move or fight or something. I walked over to him, I snatched the squeegee out of his hand, and I thumped him on the chest with it. I said, Sid, get out of here before I stick this up your ass. And I handed it back to him, and he took it and put his arms down. he walked around. I thought, well, Jesus, here's 6'8", 300 pounds. If he comes in with a tire iron or something and my back's turned, he could do some damage. I better pay attention to this next time. So I walked out into the lobby to see what he was going to, if he was going to come back with something or what he was doing. And he had moved his car up to the front of the hotel so he could, I guess, beat me up with a squeegee and make the big escape. And when he saw me standing in the lobby, he starts going, I'm going to kick your ass, Graham. You ain't no good. I mean, like a temper tantrum that a junior high school cheerleader would throw or something. So he gets in his car and he drives off. I didn't think anything else about it. I get Brian up and Terry and get them to bed and everything. And the next night we had a show in Charlotte. Now I went to the ring to wrestle Brad Armstrong. And when they rang the bell to start the match, the chant had started, squeegee, 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 and before long the whole arena's screaming squeegee. I thought, how did these people find out? There was only 3 or 4 people in the bar. I didn't say anything. I didn't call them. I wasn't proud of what had happened. I was said, it was a bad night. He was drinking. I just kind of blew it off. But man, it went like fire through everywhere. And then shortly after that, he got fired from WWE, and Bret Hart is a very good artist, and he drew a drawing with a dozen red roses, me, Pillman on my shoulders, and Sid bent over and a dozen red roses hanging out of his derriere. That was in the dressing room, his dressing room the next night. Wow. I mean, the word spread, and I don't know how. To this day, I do not know how anybody found out about it. Wow. But they did, and it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate, and then he came back to WCW a couple of years later, and we got along well, and everything was fine. And he just was having a bad moment, or he was always didn't take pain pills, didn't drink, didn't do anything. On the road, he trained, he worked out, he ate good, loyal husband, and all that stuff. And maybe if he had torn his bicep, maybe he took a pain pill, or maybe I was surprised that he was sitting at the bar. I'd never seen him sit at a bar before, so. I'd never seen him act that way, that rude and aggressive. But anyway, it happened. It was funny. Down the road we go.
That's it. Some wrestlers like Batista and others have had bad things to say about the power plant, which you were involved in. A lot of the guys said the power plant has no interest in training anybody. They just want to break guys down. What do you feel about that?
They couldn't have been talking about the power plant that I ran.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe one of the, because Batista wasn't even around when I was running the power plant.
Right.
He hadn't even started in the business. I mean, the power plant has been closed since 2001.
Right.
And as far as the days of making people do 1,000 squats and push-ups and beating them up and all that, it's been over for a long, long time. So all we did was try to teach psychology and how to wrestle and try to give some people an insight into, I got every TV show that was ever done and would show it so everybody sit down the next day and watch it on a monitor and pick and show, and that was good, no, I shouldn't have done that and everything. So yes, back when I started and a lot of other people started, you got Hulk Hogan, first 30 seconds of his first workout, Hero broke his ankle, spit on him, kicked him. Oh, big muscle boy, think you're tough, huh? Want to be a wrestler? When you heal, you'll come back. He healed and he went back. Hero taught him how to wrestle. So, yes, things were done in a very violent way years ago. Maybe they're done in some place like that now, I don't know. But that definitely wasn't happening at the power plant.
Were you there for the Orndorff Vader fight?
I had just left.
Oh, so you missed it?
I just left. I had been gone about a month.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd been gone about a month. And Vader was a bully. He was a bully and thought again, he was frustrated. He always thought he should be the world's champion. He thought he was the best. He thought he was this. He thought he was that. Leon could be a good guy that could be just crazier than a shithouse rat too. And when I heard what happened, I had to laugh because Paul would always wear flip-flops in the dressing room before he put his boots on. And it's lucky for Vader he was wearing flip-flops, because after Paul punched him and knocked his ass out, he started stomping him, but fortunately he just had flip-flops on and couldn't really hurt him, or he would have stomped him till he did brain damage. I mean, Paul's another badass.
Yeah.
I played football. He was the Brandon Bull. I mean, I played football junior high school, high school. I was the guy that wrestled Paul Orndorff when he came down for his first match.
Wow.
When his a friend of his father was on the sheriff's department. Paul and I went to the University of Tampa together. He was just an awesome athlete that was hot-headed and would fly off the handle, and I mean, so the wrestling business was perfect for him. But I was the guy that wrestled him his first tryout.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Vader's very lucky that Paul had flip-flops on.
Squeegee, flip-flops, we covered it all.
And Paul hit him Paul at that time had the neck atrophy and basically had one arm.
One arm, right.
Yeah, I mean, his one arm was real thin, but his other one was enough to beat Vader,
What was the story with the uncensored match between Barry Darsow and Dustin Rhodes? Were you there for that? There was all controversy.
in the trailer?
Yeah, there was all controversy over that. Were you there for that?
Yeah, I was there. I was the road agent.
So what the hell?
When I got there, I looked at the area that they were going to be wrestling in, and I said, guys, this could be very dangerous. There was jagged things and sharp things and bars and stuff sticking out, and you got a truck driving down the road and public highway. The police didn't block cars or anything off. I mean, I said, this could be a very dangerous situation we got going here. And at that time, if anybody got hit in the nose or got an eye split or anything done, TBS wanted no blood on TV. They would just shut the match off. They didn't show any blood. I mean, and they had a helicopter. They spent a lot of money to do this match in the truck, which was my idea. And so I get out there and I went, wow. I said, if somebody gets hurt and somebody starts bleeding, we've got all this money in this deal. They might just pull it. They might not use it. So I said, try your best under these crazy ass circumstances not to get punched in the nose or punched in the mouth, or try not to start bleeding, because I don't want them to waste their money and have to can the match. Well, that didn't happen. And Bischoff Jerkoff, because I was the agent, called me in the office, and the day before my contract had come up, and I went in his office. I says, hey, Eric, my contract's up. This is after I gave him the winning formula for how to save it. This is after I'd done all that. Well, he didn't want me around because he didn't want me to meet the other people and them to find out that he was a dumbass and that I had given him all the plans for success. So when I said to the TV engineer that was there, and I don't remember his name now, I said, what happens if somebody starts bleeding? I mean, what are we going to do? And he says, we've discussed it in a meeting and everything, and he said, I think it'll be okay. So, okay. Long story short, they were bleeding. I get called in the office, and there was some TV guys sitting around, and I told Eric, I said, Eric, I told everybody to be as careful as they could. I said, this is going to be a very dangerous situation. Plenty of things to get hurt on. I was concerned that if anybody bled, that you would cut it off and not use it, and all the money would have been spent for nothing, and I didn't want that to happen. And he said, just go home for a couple of weeks, let the smoke blow over, and everything will be all right. The day before, when I went in and asked for my contract, he said, well, I can't really give you a contract. He put his hand out. He shook my hand and he says, all I can tell you, as long as I've got a job here, you've got a job here. You've done a good job. I went, gee, thanks, okay. And then the next day we did the video, and 3 weeks later he had the chicken shit call me at home and said, and they used all the footage. They didn't edit. They didn't waste any money. They didn't do anything. People are still talking about the match in the truck, and all that kind of stuff. So he was wanting to get rid of me to protect his own stupidity around other people. And Hogan always brought his entourage. He had Jimmy Hart. He had Eddie Leslie. He had 3 or 4 guys that he always brought in with him. So Bischoff fired me to keep me from talking to his bosses and to free up some money to help pay for the Hogan gang that was coming in. And it was just one of those things. That's that.
How difficult were the politics in WCW?
Oh, they were outrageous. I mean, they were absolutely outrageous. You couldn't say boo. You couldn't. We had a list of things that for interviews. You couldn't say this on an interview. You can't say I'm gonna whip your butt. You can't say this. You can't say that. You can't. Nobody. If you got any blood in the match that was canceled or just quit or don't shoot it. You couldn't do this. I mean, it was just stupid. About 2 or 3 weeks before the truck thing, Bischoff calls me and he says, "You got to come with me. We got a meeting with the heads. We're going to do the North Tower. The wrestling office was in the South Tower. We had a meeting at the North Tower. I want you to come with me." It's okay. So we go in this room and holy shit, there's like 10 guys and there's these graphs on the wall starting in 1974. I want to say at Championship Wrestling from Atlanta. Started on TBS 74, 75, somewhere in there. And it had the months, and it had the ratings. The years, the months, the ratings. And it goes around the thing, and some college-educated dumbass, my dad always had a funny line. He said, "Kid," because I went, "Dad, you know, I just don't want to go to college. I'm not a good student. I want to work. I want to get out in the field and work. I want to earn a living. I don't like school. Whatever." And he said, "Well, Mike, you know, college isn't for everyone." He said, "And always remember this, if you send an idiot to college, you get a college-educated idiot back." So Ted Turner was a great guy. He was cool. We had a couple meetings, and he was just huge balls, would go out and tackle things that shouldn't have worked, and he made them work and everything else. Long story short, we're in this meeting, and all these guys that know nothing about the wrestling business, nothing whatsoever, probably didn't even watch it on TV, but they're the one basically controlling our company. If you graduated from college, you could get a job with Ted Turner. So we had a bunch of college-educated idiots in this big office. And they're saying, "Well, Mike, can you tell me why we're not doing we're doing 3.5s and 4s over here, and back there they're doing 10s and 11s and this and this and this?" I looked at him, Bischoff sitting there. I walked to the very end. I said, "Can anybody tell me who owned Championship Wrestling from Georgia from 1974 to 1977, or whatever the years were?" And they all went, "No." I said, "Fred Ward, Paul Jones, boom, 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 boom." They were all wrestling people. They had all wrestled. They all were wrestling promoters. They were doing the TVs. They knew what they were doing. Now, from 1978 to 19, can you tell me who owned Championship? No. I said, Jim Barnett, Ole Anderson, the Briscoes. I said, again, they're all wrestling people. They're running a wrestling company. They'd all been in the ring before. They know what they were doing. Now, in 1989, can you tell me who owned the wrestling business? And they all looked at each other and I said, "Didn't we kind of buy it?" And that's when the ratings started going shit. Now I said, didn't we buy it? Didn't that when Turner bought wrestling or whatever? I said, "Bingo! You're exactly correct." I said, "And you people don't know anything about the wrestling business. Your own graph, your own chart tells you exactly why we are failing. Because you set the rules for us wrestling people to live by, and you don't know what you're doing." I thought Bischoff was going to jump right straight out of his chair. He was like looking like shh, don't say anything, don't say anything. I went, "I'm not going to take the heat for anything. We can't do anything. We can't do interviews. Nobody can do nothing. Anything at all that happened. We had human resources at every TV that we had to give the TV to the human resource guy and have him read it and okay it that there was nothing that was sexually explicit. There was nothing that was violent. Nobody was going to say anything that might offend anybody. You couldn't say black. You couldn't say blue. You couldn't say green. You can't say this. You can't say that." And I went, "Jesus, guys, you could take Mark Spitz and tell him to swim across the swimming pool, but if you put a 100-pound anchor around his neck, he can't swim." So when I told everybody, the heads of all the companies, that they needed to keep their nose out of our business, that didn't go over real well. So.
Oh, yeah. Hall and Nash.
Great team.
More chaos?
Oh, well, they were popular and big and successful and everything in New York. They came to WCW, and I was gone at that time when they got there, because they came after Hogan was there, and basically it looked like the WWE had come down and taken over WCW. There was the three biggest stars from the WWE are now on WCW TV. So New World Order, everything. I mean, it was new, it was exciting, but they were seeing WWE and WCW on the same TV show. Mm-hmm. But wrestling fans know a lot of people have demons and issues, and Scott Hall started his wrestling career in my office. I mean, he was from Orlando. I've known him from day one. God, if I got to pick one guy that had a big natural body that could move, that was graceful, that was muscular, that just had everything going for him, it'd have been Scott Hall. He had it all. He had all the tools, and he reminded me of a story last night. He said, "Remember that night in Nassau? You looked at me and said, 'Jesus, if I could just put my brain in your body, I could make $1 million.'" And he said, "I'll split it with you." I said, "It's a little more complicated than that." But I wasn't there, so I imagine there was Scott being the nutty. He's very cut and dry, to the point. I'm sure he was saying things that people didn't want to hear. Nash getting more and more involved in the office and that kind of stuff. And like I say, Nash is always thinking about himself. He wants to keep himself good. He wants to keep himself over. He wants to keep himself in the power seat. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you can do it and the company is successful and it's making money and all that. So just a lot of, and Hogan, Terry's always been in control of his destiny. And so you had a lot of power people struggling in a company that was already struggling. So the guys at the North Tower telling the guys in the South Tower what they need to do and how they need to do it, and they didn't know. So it all just started crumbling and collapsing from all sides, from the wrestlers to the office to the thievery to just everything. It just all fell apart.
So I guess it sounds like you were very surprised when they went out of business.
I was in shock that it stayed in business. I couldn't believe it. I'm going, wow, they must have a lot of money, because they sure waste enough of it.
Wow. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, I just had no clue. None of them had any clue how to run a wrestling company.
There's a story told many times that you threatened to slash Chris Benoit's throat, and he used that as an excuse to get out of his contract. You ever heard that before?
Oh, I've heard it.
What are your thoughts? This is not a PG show we're doing, so don't worry about it.
Well, it's public knowledge that Benoit started having an affair with Nancy, Kevin's wife. Mm-hmm. Kevin would be in the ring wrestling, and Benoit would have her out, being romancing her and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely insulted Kevin in the worst way you could insult someone, by doing something like that in the workplace. Everybody else knew, and pride and everything. Benoit did about as bad a situation and Nancy as you could do. Okay. With that being said, Kevin, when he found out about it, never went and beat Benoit up. Never did nothing. He left him alone. And I asked Kevin, because Kevin's violent. He's violent. I said, "Kevin, how'd you get over? I mean, God, I got nuts. I don't know if I could have handled it or not." And he said, "Mike, I lost my wife. I lost my brand new home on Daytona Beach. I lost almost all my money. I didn't want to lose my job. If I said boo to Chris Benoit, I'd lose my job. And I didn't. That's all I had left. If I would have done that, she would have beat me. I'd have lost everything." I went, "That makes sense. I get it." So he never bothered Chris Benoit. He never did nothing. Nancy is a shit-disturbing bitch. She had a real dark, evil side that unless you knew the family, you didn't know existed. So she was stirring Chris up all the time. Kevin's going to get you. You know, he's not the kind of guy to let you do this. So every time you'd go home, Nancy was yapping, keeping Chris wired up. When Kevin Sullivan got the booking job, I called him the Band of Midgets. Benoit, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn,
Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero. They all went to our boss. What the heck was another? TB Bill. Nice guy. He was an accountant. How they thought he could run wrestling. He was the accountant for WCW. How are you going to run wrestling as an accountant? But he was a nice guy. He tried. He was polite. He was nice. They go to him and say, we can't trust our careers in the hands of Kevin Sullivan. And because Mike Graham is his friend and a road agent, we want Kevin fired and we want Mike fired. Just because.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy, Bill Bush was his name. So Billy says, well, he said, either fire him or we're going to New York. So Bill said, well, we're talking to you, trying to talk you out of this. Do any good? Nope. They got to be fired or we're leaving. Bill said, I guess you're going to be leaving then because I won't be threatened and I'm not going to fire someone for no reason. He said, I can't fire him. What have they done? They haven't done anything. Can't just fire somebody for the heck of firing them. So Bill comes and tells me and Kevin. We're in Cincinnati. We're in Cincinnati, Ohio. And and so he comes and tells us that they want us fired just because they can't trust Kevin because of his relationship with Nancy, and he never got back at Benoit, and that because he was the booker, he was going to ruin his career and do all stupid. And Kevin had nothing but respect for Benoit in the ring. You know, he didn't agree with what he had done personally, but as far as in the ring, he was good, and there was no problem. So I was livid. So I walked out of the dressing room, and I found Benoit in the dressing room. I said, you come with me. We got to have a talk. I walked him out in the middle of the arena where nobody else was around. And I said, I just had a talk with Bill Bush. I said, Kevin has done nothing ever but compliment your work and say what a great guy you are in the ring and want to give you a push and thinks, you know, that you could make money and all that kind of stuff. I said, me, I don't think you'll draw a dime. But Kevin does. Me, if you'd have taken my wife and my money and humiliated me in the workplace in front of all my friends, and if you'd have done to me what you did to Kevin Sullivan, I said, I'd beat your ass every time I saw you. Every day. Every time I saw you, you'd get an ass whipping if you'd have done that to me. Because I said, that was wrong. You shouldn't have done it. It was wrong. And I said, but now you're trying to take my job because I'm Kevin's friend? You didn't bang my old lady. You didn't embarrass me. You didn't do anything to me. But I'm Kevin's friend. You want me to get fired? That takes food and money from my family now. And you're doing it just because you're spiteful. I said, if you mess with me, I'll cut your head off. I'll put it on a stick in your front yard so all the neighborhood kids can come throw rocks at it. I said, I'm not Kevin Sullivan. I don't care about losing my job. I don't care about anything else. If you mess with my livelihood, I will come get you. Now you take that back and figure it out. And he looked at me. JJ and I was talking about that this morning. He runs back to the back. Hour later, JJ comes and gets me. He says, oh, Mike, I can't believe. And he was kind of laughing. He said, I know you did it. I'm not even going to ask you if you did it. I know you did. I said, you know I did what, JJ? I just got a call from Human Resources. Benoit called him and said that he had to leave here immediately because you threatened his life. I just looked at JJ and kind of smiled. I said, you know, that's a bunch of crap, James. I said, did I say I would beat him up if he had taken my wife and humiliated me like he did Kevin? Yeah. I said, he's trying to take my job, so of course he's going to talk trash about me. But did I say I was going to kill him? No, I never said that. So he said, well, you got to call the lady at the human resources. So I had to get on the phone, I had to call her, I had to explain everything to her. In the meantime, they all left, and I looked at it as though we saved the company. Their salaries combined was almost $3 million, and they never drew a dime. I got the minute-to-minute reports from all the TVs. People were changing the station when they were coming on. Never drew a dime. So I kind of laughed when they left. I didn't care.
Early memories of Lex Luger.
Dumbass from day one.
Really?
Yeah, dumbass from day one. He was the epic big man syndrome. Just because he had some muscles, he thought that people should really think he was good. He failed as a football player. He failed as everything he ever tried to do. The only reason he made it in wrestling is because he was a good opponent. He was wrestling Ric Flair. If you couldn't go in the ring, if you didn't have Luger's tools, I mean, he looked great. Cannot take that away from him. He looked great. Big arms, lean, but his head never did quite get in the process. And he was always a good challenger. He was always a good opponent for the Ric Flairs and Rick Rudes and the guys that could get in the ring and really get the job done. Luger always thought because he had big muscles you were supposed to be afraid of him, or because he did this, or because he was taller than you were supposed to not do certain things. And he always had this misconception of what wrestling was about. And you know, he was one of the guys that made a lot of money running on somebody else's coattails.
Why do you think, in your career, who did you find that was overrated and underrated?
Overrated and underrated. I would say Lex Luger was probably the most overrated guy that made more money, that did everything for somebody that really didn't have much talent. And probably Barry Windham, underrated. Because like I said, when I did the TVs at WCW, I used to get the minute-by-minute ratings. I knew who the fans at home were watching. I knew when they were going to get a beer out of the refrigerator, or a cup of coffee, or candy, or spank the kid, or whatever. And every time Barry Windham came on TV, the ratings had a little spike. They just did. Every time Booker T came in on TV, the ratings dropped. Every time the band of midgets came on TV, the ratings dropped. When the Mexicans came on TV, the ratings dropped. Goldberg, they did good. Hogan, they were huge. Barry Windham, they were huge. Different guys in different positions, but across the board, I think Barry Windham was probably the most underrated. For Barry Windham never to be the world's champion was insane. Insane.
Okay, that's a question I had personally. Why was he never a WWE or NWA heavyweight champion of the world?
Barry was Barry. Barry is crazy. I mean, not crazy. Barry, you know, he sometimes liked to disappear for a day or two at a time and go out hunting or fishing, or he never took it. The business was so easy to him, and it came so natural that he never really looked at it as work. It was always play. You know, so if he was playing at work and having a good time and making money, then if he wanted to take a couple days to take his family and go someplace, he just did it. So it was, he just, and I don't think the promoters realized, and I know at WCW, Eric Bischoff never looked at a television rating. The TV people, they looked at the 5-minute stuff, you know what I mean, or the quarterly ratings, but they never got a minute-to-minute sheet and sat down with a run sheet and the minute-to-minute report and looked at the names and looked to see. And they had all that available to them and they never used it. I went, holy smokes, this is so easy. And you just write a little thing, yeah, rating came up, rating went down, rating came up. And you do that for a month, Doesn't take a genius to book the thing. You get 4 weeks in a row, somebody's rating came up, you put them on TV. Your rating don't come up, you're out of here. But no, nobody ever looked at any of that. They just kept writing down names and paying paychecks and just kept going on. The well was too deep. They never figured they'd run out of money.
Till they dried it out.
Yeah. Well, when Turner sold a bunch of the assets of TBS to Microsoft or one of the big computer companies, and the computer company wanted no sports. They didn't want baseball. They didn't want wrestling. They didn't want basketball. They didn't want nothing. They weren't into sports. They were into computers and the TV business, but they didn't want to put up with any aggravation from any athletes. So that combined with Bischoff's theft, total confusion, and everything else going on was the ultimate downfall. A lot of things bankrupted that company.
We're going to continue on Chris Benoit. Horrible tragedy happened to son, the whole style.
To everybody.
Yeah.
To everybody. It was a horrible tragedy,
Right.
period.
Did you, knowing him and seeing how he was, did you see this kind of him in his head or he's coming or?
No, I hadn't been around Chris since he went to New York. But, I watched Nancy grow up, or his wife. She sat on the front row of Orlando for years and years when she was a little girl with her mother. Then she got married, and then there was her and her husband and the mother. And, when Kevin first started going out with her, and I knew her from day one, and she had, like a lot of people do, I'm not picking on anybody, but she had a pretty dark, evil side to her. And she stabbed Kevin in the chest, tried to stab him in the chest with a butcher knife when they were married. Cops came and arrested her. Kevin went and got her out of jail, and cops going, "What are you doing?" He said, "She's my wife. I can't have her arrested in jail." I said, "Well, you could have been in the morgue right now, because if you wouldn't have got your arm up, it would have been more than the tip of the knife going in your chest. You'd have been stabbed." So, in any relationship, any husband and wife, any guy and girlfriend, anything, emotions and life and stress and just things can get crazy. Well, she, like some women I've known, knew how to really piss a man off. And she liked pushing those buttons, She liked pushing the buttons. She liked making someone angry. So all anybody can do is guess, Nobody, the people that know what happened are all dead. But I don't see Chris as a murderer, an intentional, like a premeditated thing, other than, and I think it sucks because he did what he did to his little boy. He never hurt anybody. He never did anything. He didn't deserve what he got. And in being married, relationships and that kind of thing, I think probably Chris got in an argument and maybe pushed Nancy or did something and she hit her head, or I think if I have to guess at it, and that's all we can do is guess, you ask my opinion, I think she accidentally died. I don't think he meant to kill her. But once she was dead, now insets the heartbeat, the, oh my God, I'm going to go to prison. I've killed my wife. What am I going to do? What am I going to do this? What am I going to? Because it took him a day to think about this, so it wasn't an instantaneous thing going off in his head. And I don't know, but I've heard that the little boy text message one of his friends saying that his mommy was in the room next door, dead.
Really? Oh.
So I think in Chris's confusion, I couldn't even imagine what was going through his mind at that point, But I think he thought, who's going to take care of my boy? Is he going to go to foster home or what? I just don't know. But to think and do the thing with the little boy the next day, and then himself, he thought about it and planned that part of it. But I think it all started as an accident. I think it got way, way blown out of hand. I don't really think Chris was an intentionally evil person. I called him out. He wouldn't fight. that somebody that's going to intentionally kill somebody, I'd think if you pushed him hard enough and said enough to him that they'd come out and fight. Well, he wouldn't fight. So it was a horrible incident, and it's too bad the little boy had to be there, and he never had a chance. He never hurt anybody. He didn't do anything. That's the outcome of it. I think is just really sucks that the little boy had to be involved. But I don't think Chris was a murderer. I don't think he did anything intentionally, other than kill the little boy. He meant to do that, and he meant to kill himself. But I think it all started as an accident. That just got really nasty, and it's too bad. They were young. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and crazy things happen.
And we started off today talking about the business, and we've been in a long doldrum of. We're going to get to a little touchy subject. Everybody knows you. Knows your dad and stuff like that. What happened to your dad? How do you find out about that? And what do you maybe understand why?
Well, looking back now, kind of. But I was at the Super Bowl at Palo Alto, California. The Miami Dolphins were playing the San Francisco 49ers. John Ayers, who had grew up in Amarillo, was good friends with Terry. I'd been to parties with Terry South with John and everything. And I knew guys that were playing on the Miami Dolphins, so they paged me in the Super Bowl during the pregame festivities and music and all that kind of stuff going on. They paid Mike Graham, please come to the box office. I asked my wife, I said, did they just say Mike Graham come to the box office? They don't do that. They don't page people during the Super Bowl ceremony. That ain't done. She said, yeah, I think they said Mike Graham, go to the thing. And I asked another friend, did you hear that? Yeah. So anyway, I figure one of the guys wants to bring me down in the dressing room and say hi to the ball, because they all knew I was coming.
Okay.
And here's John Ayers said, come down and, shake everybody's hand or whatever. We'd been to Vegas, not Vegas, but Lake Tahoe, skiing, gambling, made enough money gambling, chartered a private plane to fly us from Tahoe to Palo Alto. Living life, everything was good. We were having fun. When I walked into the box, I was saying, hey, my name's Mike Graham. Page me, and the woman goes, oh yeah, you got to call home. Obviously the first thing, I think I had 2 children at the time. My son was 12 and my daughter was 9. I thought, oh my God, something's happened to one of the kids. Call home. My mother-in-law answered the phone. Hello. I said, hey, Lucille, it's Mike. And she just burst into tears. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? It's your dad. Dad? What's wrong with my dad? He shot himself. He shot himself. And he's in the hospital, and he's hooked up to machines. And your mother, a family member has to say to unplug him or keep him alive, and your mom just can't do it, and crying. And it was like all of a sudden I was in La La Land. I went, shot himself. I don't understand. And went back up in the stadium and sat down. What is it? What is it? Dad just shot himself. They went, oh my God. And I said, oh shit, nothing I can do now. It's just, no, we can't watch the game. So my friend, very successful businessman, chartered a jet and flew us home. And I got back home the next morning and went to the hospital, and there he sat back in the corner, his head all bandaged up and everything. Mom was crying, and the hospital full of people. Sat down with the doctors and said, what do we do? I said, will he ever walk, talk, see, get up, go to the bathroom? No, he's done. The bullet didn't come out. The bullet went in his head and rattled around and went around and just like destroyed everything. And he said not only that, but he said he shot himself twice. I said, what? I guess the first time he put the gun in his mouth, and when he pulled the trigger, he flinched, and it blew the side of his face off. His cheek and jawbone and all that kind of stuff was gone. Put the gun in his other hand and put it up the side of his head. I said, well, it was no accident. I thought, well, maybe he was cleaning the gun and it went off, or something. I was grasping at anything to say, my dad really didn't commit suicide by shooting himself. He didn't do it. Well, he did, and the doctor said, he'll be a vegetable the rest of his life. He'll never get out of bed. And I said, You don't want to live that way. He didn't want to live healthy, much less in the state that he's in. So I said, will he feel any pain, if we unhook the machine? Or he said, no. I said, there won't be any pain, there won't be nothing. I said, well, how long will he live? He said, maybe an hour, hour and a half. So I looked at Mom and I said, Mom, got to do it. He wouldn't want to be here like this. So we went out and said, okay, bullet. And he lived about 5 minutes.
Take a minute.
Whew. That was only 23 years ago.
Oh, gee.
But he'd swim to my house and put my kids on a raft and swim back to his house and sit at the street at the end of the night and wait for me to come home and make sure I got home safe. And just, it was unbelievable. My morning wake-up call every morning. What are you doing today? What are you doing today? What are you buying? What are you, looking at buildings, looking at this, looking at that, what's up? So it was just totally, and then I kept saying, I said, I got to find his doctor. He had to have had something that was going to kill cancer or something, But just 55 and depressed, and some business deals had embarrassed him. The wrestling business was changing, and there's nothing he could do about it. And it just all consumed him at one time. And he just figured, shit on it, I'm out of here.
So that's basically the reason why, then you think?
Yeah.
Just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. The business that he loved, Vince was doing his thing, and the talent was leaving, and he was getting older, and he couldn't wrestle anymore, and he had cut the company up into our company into so many different pieces. I mean, Hiro Matsuda owned part of it, Duke Himoku owned part of it, the Briscoe brothers owned part of it, Buddy Colt owned a little piece of it, I had a piece of it, Dusty had a piece of it. He'd kind of lost control of his own business, where he had run the wrestling business of the world. I mean, Japan, America, for years and years and years and years. And had some problem at home. Just a lot of things hit him at one time.
And how did your mom take it? Was she okay after it? I mean, I know it's a horrible thing.
Yeah, we just both dealt with it. We just both dealt with it, and she had her business. She really focused. She had a company called Lucy's Fancy, and I mean, she just went to work every day and stayed there as long as she could, and would occasionally go to High Lie. She liked to bet on High Lie. She'd go to High Lie. Just tried to stay socially busy with her girlfriends and her business, and continue on. What else can you do?
I'm going to ask this question. I don't feel too comfortable asking it, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and you can answer it any way you like. Okay. Billy Jack Haynes, in a shoot interview that he did, said that he thinks your father killed himself because Dusty took all the talent and left for Crockett.
No,
what do you think?
A little piece. Okay. A little piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, he was hitting that point of life. He had been in the wrestling business all of his life. He had done pretty well in real estate. Mm-hmm. He let a friend of his outside the wrestling business lie to him about some money that Dad gave him. He was supposed to be buying land with it, and the guy went and paid for truck tires, and the guy was in the trucking business and went and paid gas for his trucks. And I'm talking $500,000, not just 20 grand or something, but $500,000. And Dad felt, and his pride was just too much. Pride killed him. He felt embarrassed about doing that, like the guy had made him look like a fool or something. And then Dusty taking the guys, and this other guy cheating him out of some money, the wrestling business changing. He had issues with his personal life with my mom and that stuff. Just, I'm 57 now, so I realize, as we get older, and a lot of athletes go through it at a very young age. They have that separation anxiety when they can't participate in their sport anymore. But they're in their maybe 30s or early 40s, where there's plenty. They're young, they're healthy, they got plenty of other things they can do. When Dad went through it, it's all he'd done his whole life. You know, the wrestling business was all he knew. He had never done anything else. So when all of a sudden he sees the wrestling business changing and that going over here, and embarrassed by the guy cheating him out of the money, and personal issues at home, and just everywhere he looked, there was nothing good that he could see. Just said, I'm done.
How come you haven't worked with TNA yet?
Gosh, I mean, I know the Jarretts, and you know, my dad would go to Tennessee, and Jarrett, Jeff's dad, they were very good friends. I used to work for Jarrett some in Tennessee, and you know, they seem to run everything and do everything, and I haven't been looking for a job. I don't guess they've been looking for anybody to try to attempt to help them. So I went by a couple of times when Dusty was there just to say hi, you know, and talk to some old buds and stuff like that. But you know, I'm very happy, very content living life and doing what I'm doing. I don't need a job, and the responsibility is huge. You've got a lot of people looking up to you to earn them a living, to be the creator, to find and help, and you know, just they never needed me and I never needed them.
Okay. Thoughts on Vince Russo's booking?
I think we already went through that. He was an idiot.
Have you seen anything in TNA?
No.
His booking, so you really don't?
No. I know unless he learned something when he was at WCW, he sucked. I swear to this day, Vince sent him to WCW to put it out of business, to help put it out of business.
Really?
Because he was so stupid that he just couldn't do anything right. Now, maybe he learned. I mean, that was 2001. So, I mean, it was 7 years ago. So maybe he's learned, maybe he's changed, maybe and Jerry Jarrett was a brilliant booker. Jerry in Memphis and everything, huge money. They still got local TV. I mean, that's a territory that survived through it all. They're still there. That was Jerry Jarrett. You know, he's very sharp and knows his stuff. So Vince might have gotten that ego crap out of his head and finally sat down and learned. Or if Jarrett is in control, which I believe he is, then when he listens to Vince's ideas, is Vince Russo book TNA?
Yeah, he's head booker.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe they work good together. And Vince, but when he was at WCW, he wasn't going to listen to anybody. He didn't want anybody's input. He thought we were all stupid. So, and he thought we were stupid. We thought he was stupid. So it was a standoff.
There we go.